What is going on, everybody? Hope everybody is enjoying their day so far. We are back for another Bracketology update. We started doing this last week, and we're going to continue to do this before we get closer to the unveiling of the official field of 68, which we are just a little over a month away from finding that out. And the college basketball season is pretty much heating up now. We are now starting to get closer to now the mid to late point of the conference schedule. You'll have your conference tournaments early in March, and then you'll have the Selection Sunday unveiling. So we had a jam-packed Saturday slate and a weekend slate in general, led by Duke and North Carolina. A crazy game between Duke and UNC. We did have the Tar Heels coming all the way back and doing at the buzzer and defeating the Duke Blue Devils. So a huge win for North Carolina. We also saw last night Louisville just absolutely beat down NC State, putting up over 100 points, 118 to be exact. And then you had Kansas taking down Arizona. That was Arizona's first loss, so I'll be curious to see where Kansas stands in this latest bracketology. Same with North Carolina. You had a couple of big games in the SEC. You had Oklahoma going on the road to face off against Vandy and shock the world. Oklahoma has been very at the bottom of the SEC standings, so the Sooners was able to get an upset. You saw Alabama get a road win over Auburn. You saw Texas A&M get really manhandled by a Florida team that is starting to really figure it out. So a lot of key things happened. We definitely have some really good games tonight, tomorrow, and into the weekend. So definitely going to be excited for another week of college basketball. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the latest bracketology from ESPN's Joe Lunardi. We're also going to be implementing CBS's bracketology from Jerry Palm. We'll probably be doing that probably next week. We're going to probably be going back and forth between the two sites just to get a little bit of differentiating between the two experts. So let's go ahead and dive into the February 10th latest bracketology that was really put out there to the universe this morning. So let's go ahead and dive into the latest bracketology just to look at the updated bracket watch, look at the bubble, and look at to see what teams moved up and what teams ultimately moved down in the seeding terms. So let's go ahead and dive into the top overall seed. Is still Arizona, even after their recent loss in the fog against the Kansas Jayhawks. I mean, that was only their first loss of the season. It was a very close game, back and forth game. Kansas was out with one of their best players. Kansas was able to still get the job done, but Arizona is still the top overall seed in the latest bracket watch. New Mexico, team out of the Mountain West, is the last team in, and then Ohio State out of the Big Ten is your first team out. So just looking at this description, let's read through it pretty briefly here. Once again, North Carolina is riding the wave of being well North Carolina. A year ago, the Tar Heels were the last team selected into the field despite the worst quad one record in the history of at-large bids. This season, they're knocking on the door of the top 10 and just gained a coveted 4 seed despite a profile that's at least a line or two worse than that. It's a stark example of the difference between what yours truly thinks and our bracketology projections, which are always what we think the selection committee would do. It isn't that UNC is a bad team or can't make a deep tourney run. We simply don't often see a number 24 net ranking or number 48 defensive efficiency in the resume of a top 4 seed. Most of the time, I think blind resumes ignore valuable context. In this North Carolina team's case, a little blindness couldn't hurt. But even with all that, that was definitely a huge win for North Carolina. They'll have a couple more opportunities before the end of the season. Obviously, they'll have another test on the road in Duke later on in the season. But this North Carolina team definitely playing really good at the right time when they need to. So let's go ahead and dive into the official bracket that was released earlier today, and then we'll dive back into the bubble watch, and then we will go through how many conferences and overall teams are in this field. So let's go ahead and start off with the number 1 overall seed still in the West is Arizona Wildcats, so still no change in that. You do have some couple of changes in each region, so let's go ahead and dive into that. We do have South Florida, who would be the projected winners out of the American Athletic Conference. I know you also have Tulsa is that as well. I know that we looked at it last week. Tulsa was projected in the field. Looks like that has flipped now to South Florida. So that is definitely going to keep an eye out to watch. Obviously, the regular season matters somewhat, but ultimately, whoever gets into the field is going to come down to who wins the conference championship in the American. And right now, it's the South Florida Bulls, who would be the 12 seed. They would face off against Alabama representatives out of the SEC. And then you have Gonzaga moving down to one spot. They had a horrific loss last week. I believe it was against Portland State. If I remember correctly, that was probably one of the worst losses in all this college basketball season. So we'll see if the Zags can bounce back this week. California, this is very weird. We usually don't see this too often. I know that we see this a couple of times with Oregon when they were the 12 seed. But I can't remember the last time that we saw a Power 4 team be a projected number 13 seed. So curious to see what the reasoning is behind the Cal Golden Bears being the 13 seed. But nonetheless, the ACC has another representative with Cal sitting there at the number 13 seed overall in this field in the West region. Moving on down to the West region, you have Utah State moving up a spot to a 7 seed. And then you have Merrimack going from the 16 seed in last week's bracketology. They would now be a 15 seed facing off against the number 2 seed Nebraska Cornhuskers out of the Big Ten. So those are your changes in the West. Now let's go on to the South. NC State drops the spot from the 9 seed to an 8 seed. NC State got absolutely mollywopped last night against Louisville on the road. That was definitely not one of their best showings of the season. So NC State, definitely a team that I still have some confidence in, obviously, whenever you have a coach like Will Wade going into this tournament. But NC State, that was definitely a rough showing by them on Monday night against Louisville, who is, we will see in just a couple of moments, is a projected 6 seed. UNC Wilmington, I told you last week to keep an eye out on this team. I definitely think this could be a 13 seed or even a 12 seed, just depending on where they slide into this field. But we do see UNC Wilmington. They would be their respective conference champs, so they would be a 13 seed in the South. You do have BYU falling down to the 6 seed. You have San Diego State now moving up. They would be in the play-in, so they would face off against Texas. Texas had a rough one this past weekend on the road. Actually, no, they've defeated Ole Miss. Ole Miss continues to slide down these rankings, but San Diego State, one of those Mountain West teams that are starting to trend in the right direction in this bracketology. No more really changes in the South. Let's go on now to the upper right portion of the bracket, to the Midwest region. So you have 2 newcomers moving up, NJIT and Morgan State. So those would be the 2 16 seeds facing off in the playing game in Dayton. They would get a date. The winner of that would face off against the number 1 overall seed in the Midwest, which would be the Michigan Wolverines. And then you have St. John's. St. John's got a huge upset win against UConn. St. John's starting to build a resume, and Rick Pitino's squad is really starting to play some really good basketball as they start to really get into the latter part of Big East play. Same with North Carolina. North Carolina, we talked about them at the top of this show. North Carolina, a huge win at home against Duke. Looks like Duke was just going to just steamroll over North Carolina. North Carolina had a huge surge in the second half, and they hit a buzzer beater with just over 3 seconds left at the buzzer. And North Carolina, a huge win to their resume. So North Carolina, like we saw in Joe Lenardi's pretty much article there, looking at the metrics, they are a top 25 net team, and their defensive efficiency, they're top 50 defense. So stats-wise, they would be a 6 or a 7, but their resume is really starting to shape up as the weeks go on here. Moving on, we have Michigan State moving up a spot. They got a huge win this past weekend at home against Illinois. Illinois came into that game as one of the hottest teams in all of college basketball. So huge win for Sparty there. North Dakota State moves down from a 13 projected seed to a 14 seed. That would definitely not be a scenario if you are a North Dakota State fan to face off against Tom Izzo in Michigan State, because we know damn well that Tom Izzo and that squad is going to be a tough out in March. We have Austin Peay moving down a spot to 15 seed. They would get a date with Iowa State, the Cyclones, out of the Big 12. So that would definitely be another huge test for Austin Peay. Moving on to the final region we will look at is the East region. You do have UT Martin moving down to the 16 seed. They would face off against the number 1 overall seed in their East region, would be Duke. As you see, that game would be in Greenville. That would pretty much be a home game for the Blue Devils. Vandy moves down to the 4 to the 5 seed after a horrific loss at home to Oklahoma. Like I mentioned, Oklahoma only had 1 win in the conference before that game was played. Oklahoma, one of the worst teams in the SEC, along with South Carolina and LSU. So that was definitely a bad loss for Vandy. So we'll see if the Commodores can bounce back in their midweek game and continue on with a nice season. Hawaii, they are now the new team in the field. They are projected winner out of the WAC. So Hawaii, we do see them as the 13 seed. They would face off against Texas Tech, and Texas Tech's got all the talent to make another deep run this year. And then that is all the changes. So on the bubble, last 4 byes are Georgia, St. Mary's, UCLA, and USC. So we do have a couple more changes from last week's bracketology. Georgia is the new team in. Georgia continues to slide down just a tad bit. St. Mary's still locked in, and then UCLA and USC. So we do have some couple of changes, but still holding firm so far as we head into early on in February. Last 4 in. So this will be the teams that would ultimately skip being the last 4, like the first 4 games here. This would be the Texas, Miami, San Diego State, and New Mexico. Georgia, St. Mary's, UCLA, and USC would ultimately not have to play in the first round games in Dayton. But Texas, Miami, San Diego State, and New Mexico, those are 4 teams that right now, if the field were to be unveiled, they would be safe. But you never know what could happen, especially in the last couple of weeks of the regular season. Your first 4 out teams, as we saw in the bracketology, Ohio State is the last team in. And then you have Missouri, Cal, and Virginia Tech. So Cal is the number 13 seed, but they are first 4 out. So make that make sense. Maybe he missed another team. Maybe it's like UC Davis or somebody like that. But right now it looks like California is in the field. Missouri and Virginia Tech, Ohio State, still some work to do. Next 4 out, these are teams that are definitely need to start winning some ball games. Oklahoma State, VCU, Seton Hall, and Tulsa. Like I mentioned, Tulsa was projected in the field. But looks like Lenardia swapped that with South Florida. So we'll see if that changes as these weeks continue on. Seton Hall, a team out of the Big East that was trending in the right direction at the start of the season, looks like they have started to lose some rhythm there. So we'll see if the Pirates can turn around. VCU, a team that we have seen in the field from the A-10. Oklahoma State, they got drubbed by Arizona this past week. So, I mean, everybody's pretty much losing to Arizona, unless your team name is Kansas, but Oklahoma State has got some work to do. So looking at the multi-bid conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC are now tied. If you remember last week, looking at it, the SEC only had 9, the Big Ten was 10. So it looks like the Big Ten and the SEC, those are the 2 best conferences in all of college basketball this season. ACC not far behind them at 9. The Big 12 as well has 7. So the Power 4 conferences are well representative in this projected field of 68. And then you have a couple of Group of 5 or mid-major representatives with the West Coast, Mountain West, and Big East, all with representation with 3 teams. So that is the latest bracketology. Now let's go ahead and dive into some official picks here. If you were with us last week, we did have Arizona and Michigan making it to the national championship game. I did ultimately have Michigan winning the national championship, but we will see if that's going to change as I pull up the bracket here. I already filled out the bracket. All that we have to do is make our picks. So let's go ahead and pull that up on the screen here for you guys watching at home. We will get right to picking pretty much the entire field from the first round all the way to the Final Four and ultimately crowning our national championship here as we sit on this Tuesday of February 10th, 2026. So let's go ahead and pull this thing up here. So if you want to do this yourselves at home, go to pdffiller.com. You can just search up March Madness bracket filler. I know it's going to probably give you like an old bracket, like I'm using the one from 2022, but it still works for this experiment. So let's go ahead and dive into the West region, as you do have the number 1 overall seed in this projected field, the Arizona Wildcats. They would face off against the Ivy League winners. That would be Harvard. So whether it's Harvard, Princeton, or Yale, but looks like Harvard is projected to be the winner out of the Ivy League. And really no ifs, ands, or buts about this one. I'm going to go with Arizona. Even with the recent loss to Kansas, not really too worried about this team. They have been dominant this season. So give me the Arizona Wildcats moving on there. Then we have our first for 8-9 matchups. We have Texas A&M and SMU. And Texas A&M has kind of faltered. They got blown out by Florida. Then they lost by 3, giving up 100 points to Alabama. So an 0-2 week for the Aggies. Still a very talented team. And then SMU out of the ACC. ACC, another dominant conference there. So this is going to be a hell of a game, an in-state matchup. But give me Texas A&M. I definitely think that their offense can just be too overpowered for SMU. So give me the Aggies to move on there. Then we have 5 seed Alabama, number 12 seed South Florida. I don't see an upset ripen here in the 5 versus the 12. I will have Alabama. Bama, like I mentioned at the top, did get a huge win on the road in the jungle, beating Auburn. And they did go on the road to College Station as well. They've really, put up, like I mentioned, put up 100 points. So the defense is worrisome for Alabama, but the offense, if everyone is lining up from behind the arc, then Alabama is going to be a very dangerous team in March. Now we have number 4 seed Gonzaga, number 13 seed California. So we do have a West Coast showdown in the first round. I will go with Gonzaga, though. I still have faith in this team. Even with that recent loss to Portland, I'm going to give them the win. Now let's go on to the 6 seed Clemson, the representative out of the ACC. And the last unbeaten in college basketball, Miami of Ohio. I'm going to go with the upset here. I don't know if I even want to call this an upset because Miami of Ohio is a very dangerous team and a very talented team that you definitely do not want to draw in the first round of this tournament. So give me the Red Hawks. And they have been red hot. There've been a lot of games where they had to come down to the wire, like the Buffalo and Akron game. But this is definitely a talented team that could definitely make some noise early on. Then we have the defending national champs, the number 3 seed Florida Gators, facing off against Winthrop. Give me the defending champs. They are starting to play some elite basketball. They're starting to figure it out. They had a tough schedule starting off. Like their non-conference was absolutely brutal. That's why, they kind of had some little highs and some lows early on in the season, but they are starting to figure it out at the right time. Then we have Utah State and USC facing off. Let me go with a 10 seed upset here, if you do want to call it. I'm going to go with the Trojans out of USC. I think that's going to be a hell of a basketball game if we do get it, but I'm going to go with the Trojans there. And then we have Nebraska and Merrimack. I think that Nebraska is going to roll over Merrimack here, so give me the Cornhuskers to move on to the second round, setting up an all Big Ten showdown in the second round. All right, let's go ahead and complete the West round. Going on to the second round games, we have number 1 seed Arizona facing off against number 8 seed Texas A&M. A lot of offense would be in this game, but I'm going to go with the number 1 overall seed in this field. Give me Arizona to move on there. And then we have Alabama and Gonzaga. Give me Alabama in this little 5-4 mini upset, if you do want to call it. I'm going to go with Alabama. They still have a ton of talent on this team, and even without Bediako on the roster anymore, I'm going to go with Alabama getting the win here over the Zags. Then we have Miami of Ohio against the defending champs. I mean, look at this, the last unbeaten versus the defending champs. What a storyline that would be, but I am going to go with Florida. This is a team to keep an eye on. I definitely think that they have all the talent to get back to the Final Four. Then we have USC and Nebraska, like I mentioned just a couple of moments ago, an all Big Ten showdown. But give me Nebraska to beat USC. So we pretty much have all chalk here except for number 5, Alabama. That's the only higher seed moving on to the Sweet 16 in the West region. We have Arizona and Alabama. I'm going to go with Arizona. Arizona's just been the more consistent teams in this field. Alabama, I mean, if they start missing threes, then this is not going to be a team that's going to be going far. So give me Arizona. And then we have Florida and Nebraska. What a game it would be. This would be as well. I mean, this has been the 2 hottest teams in basketball, but I'm going to go with Florida getting the win there. So we have the number 3 seed Florida facing off against the number 1 seed Arizona. This would be a hell of a matchup. I'm going to change it up here. I'm going to probably go against a popular opinion. Maybe I'm like very high on Florida. I was very high on Florida last year. I just think that this team is starting to really figure it out at the right time. So give me Florida here. I don't think that, all one seeds are going to be advancing on to the Final Four. I like Carly try to do that in this bracketology. Try to have some fun with it. So let's go ahead and have our first number one seed not make it to the Final Four. So we have the Gators and the defending champs back in the familiar territory they are with. So now let's go on now to the bottom left portion of the bracket as we have the number one seed out of the Big East. We have the UConn Huskies. They would face off against the winner of Long Island and Bethune-Cookman. Give me Bethune to win that one, but no matter who wins this one, I just think that UConn is going to be a little bit too much for them. Then we have NC State, Wisconsin. We saw this same matchup projected in last week's bracketology. I picked Wisconsin. Really, nothing's changed that. Give me the Badgers there to take down the Fighting Will Wades. Then we have Tennessee and Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin, another team to keep an eye out, but I definitely think Tennessee, man, they had pretty much Kentucky on the ropes there. You got to give credit to the Cats. But, I mean, Tennessee now 0-2 against Kentucky. But Tennessee, I'm going to go ahead and trust them here. I don't know how far I'm going to have the Volunteers go on. I guess we'll have to find out here. Then we have Virginia in the number 13 seed, UNC Wilmington. I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger on UNC Wilmington. Like I mentioned, I think there is going to be at least a 1-12 or 13 seed upset. Give me UNC Wilmington to pull off the upset against Virginia. And then we have BYU, the 6th seed, facing off against the winner of Texas and San Diego State. Give me Texas, but ultimately give me BYU. This is a team that has a ton of firepower on the offensive side, and they can score 90 on you in a heartbeat. So give me BYU. Then we have Purdue facing off against Portland State. I am going to go with Purdue winning this one, the 3 seed there. And let's go on now to the 7 and the 10. We have Iowa and St. Mary's. I'm going to go with Iowa. Iowa's starting to put together quite a resume. St. Mary's as well out of the West Coast Conference. They're always very consistent getting into this field of 68. Then we have Houston and Navy. I respect the troops, but don't really see a close game against Houston. Houston has been an absolute wagon, at least in Big 12 play. All right, let's go on now to the second round. We have number 1 seed UConn facing off against number 9 seed Wisconsin. I do have the Connecticut Huskies moving on there, so I don't see any 8 or 9 upsets over the 1 seed happening just yet. And then we have Tennessee versus UNC Wilmington. I will have the Volunteers move it on to the Sweet 16. They take down the Cinderella story of the tournament so far in UNC Wilmington. Then we have number 6 seed BYU and 3 seed Purdue. I'm going to go with another upset here. Give me BYU to advance past Purdue. Would be a ton of firepower as well in that matchup. And then we have Iowa and Houston. I will go with Houston. Sets up a Sweet 16 all Big 12 showdown between BYU and Houston. Then we have UConn and Tennessee. We saw the same matchup on the women's side. UConn drubbed them. I think it would pretty much be the same scenario. I think that UConn, very talented team. I think that they survive in advance. Then we go to BYU and Houston. I'm going to go with the Houston Cougars there. So all chalk in the Elite Eight in this region. We have UConn and Houston, the top 2 seeds out of this region. I'm going to go with Houston taking down UConn. I think that a lot of people think that Houston, this could be the year that they finally do it. They made it to the national championship last year, ended up losing to Florida. I think that Houston, they have just been an absolute juggernaut in college basketball for the past couple of years. Kelvin Sampson's done a terrific job. They got a lot of talent, and their defense is always elite. I mean, pretty much year in and year out. So far we have Florida and Houston. That would set up a rematch of the national championship game last year, so that would definitely be a key storyline heading into that. Now we go on now to the top right portion of the bracket. You have Michigan, the 1 seed, facing off against the winner of NJIT in Morgan State. Give me Morgan State to win, but won't matter. Michigan, very talented team. They could very well be the number 1 overall team, I guess, just depending on how this week go for them. If Arizona loses again, that's probably the only way Arizona even lose a game. Is probably still going to be the number one team in the AP poll, depending if, Michigan just blows their opponents out that they play this week. But Michigan moves on here. Then we have 8-9 seed, a hell of a matchup. This will be between Auburn and UCF. Give me Auburn in the 8-9 game. So we have Auburn advancing on there. Then we have St. John's in Belmont. Belmont, another, popular team in March Madness. But I'm going to go with St. John's. St. John's, another team that's really starting to play well at the right time. So give me the Johnnies to move on there. Then we have North Carolina and Troy. Troy is a very dangerous Sun Belt team. The way that North Carolina has been playing as of late, I am going to go with the Tar Heels to advance on there. And then we have the 6 versus 11, Arkansas, Miami in New Mexico. I'm going to go with Miami to win, but I do think that Arkansas gets this one done, so I don't see any upset so far in this region. Then we have Michigan State, North Dakota State. Once again, I don't have an upset here. Give me the Spartans to move on. And then we have Kentucky and UCLA. Kentucky, another team that's starting to really play well. I'm going to go with the Cats. They got a huge win this past week at home in Rupp, coming all the way back down by double digits against Tennessee to move now to 2-0 against the Volunteers in the regular season. Then we have Iowa State and Austin Peay. Give me the Cyclones to survive and advance. So we do have all chalk there. Really no upsets in this region. That's just how I see it. Then we have the 1 versus 8 seed, another really fantastic matchup that we get in the second round, Michigan and Auburn. This was last year. I'll probably be picking Auburn in this matchup, but just been too inconsistent for me. I'm going to go with Michigan. They have just been a wagon so far this season. Then St. John's and North Carolina, probably the game of the tournament so far. Like, what a matchup that we would get. A back-and-forth showdown, but I'm going to go with North Carolina to pull this one off. I mean, like I mentioned, this would be a hell of a matchup, hell of a coaching matchup as well. Give me North Carolina to move on there. Then we have Arkansas facing off against Michigan State. Going to go with the Fighting Tom Izzos to move on there. Then we have Kentucky facing off against Iowa State. Give me another upset here. I'm going to go with Kentucky, the 7 seed, pulling off the upset over Iowa State. So we pretty much have all blue bloods in this matchup. Michigan, North Carolina, Michigan State, and Kentucky. Michigan and North Carolina, I thought about pulling the trigger on an upset, but I will go with the Michigan Wolverines pulling this one off. And then we have Michigan State and Kentucky. Give me Michigan State to move on there. That would be another great matchup there. But give me Michigan State. So look at this. We have Michigan and Michigan State. The winner of the rivalry game gets to go to the Final Four, and I will have the Maize and Blue advancing on to the Final Four. So they take down the Spartans. I mean, if we get that, that would just be a hell of an environment wherever the game would be. Now let's move on to the final portion of the bracket. We have the number 1 seed in this one, Duke, facing off against the 16 seed UT Martin. I will go with Duke. Duke is definitely a team I am definitely not worried about. They just, that's a tough place to play in North Carolina. In North Carolina, they went on a run, and Duke just couldn't really have any answers for the Tar Heels late in that game. Then we have 8 seed Villanova and 9 seed Indiana. I will go with Indiana. I think that they're going to ride off their momentum of their national championship winning football team. Give me Indiana. Indiana's starting to, pile up some really good wins in Big Ten play. So give me the Hoosiers over Villanova. That would be a terrific 8-9 matchup. And then we have Vanderbilt and Liberty. Give me Liberty in this one. Vandy, this is a team that I just could not figure out. Some games they look very good. In other games, they just look very, very, discombobulated. So I will go with Liberty in this 12-5 upset. Give me, and then we have Texas Tech and Hawaii, the 4 and the 13. I will go with the 4 seed, the Red Raiders, moving on there. And then we have Louisville and Santa Clara. Santa Clara, definitely a team to keep an eye out for. But how could you pick against Louisville after what they just did last night, putting up 118 points on NC State? So Louisville is definitely a team out of the ACC. I mean, there's going to be a lot of Big 12, Big 10, ACC representation. Those have just been the top conferences so far in this college basketball season. We have Kansas facing off against East Tennessee State. I will go with the Kansas Jayhawks. Moved on, like I mentioned, a huge win for them last night against the number 1 team in the land in Arizona. St. Louis, one of the hottest teams in the country against the number 10 seed Georgia. Let's go with the hottest team in the country. Let's go with St. Louis. What a storyline that has been for them. So I got them, the Billikens, moving on to the second round. Then we have Illinois and Wright State. I will go with Illinois advancing on there. So once again, pretty much all chalk. We did have one upset with Liberty taking down Vandy, but that not too many upsets so far. I mean, so far I've had a 2 seed and a 1 seed. Let's see if I have like a top 4 or 5 seed advancing on. So we have Duke in Indiana, an old-time fashion college basketball game this would be, but I will go with Duke advancing on. We have Liberty and Texas Tech. I will have Liberty's Cinderella story ending here. I will have Texas Tech moving on there, setting up a Duke versus Texas Tech game. I feel like we have seen that quite some time over the past couple of years, especially in the tournament. And we have Louisville and Kansas. This would be a hell of a matchup, but I'm just going to go with Kansas. This Jayhawk team is definitely for real. They could definitely make a run and win the national championship this season. Then we have St. Louis in Illinois. I'm going to go with Illinois, but, man, I would love to go with St. Louis in this matchup, but I'm going to go with Illinois to move on there. So we have all top 4 seeds advancing on. So we have Duke facing off against Texas Tech would be another hell of a matchup, but I'm going to go with Duke. And then Kansas and Illinois, give me Kansas, the 3 seed, to move on to the Elite 8, setting up a very blue blood matchup between Kansas and Duke. And give me Kansas. I think that they're going to ride this momentum all the way to the Final Four. So we have another 3 seed join the party for the Final Four team standing here. So only one seed survived and advanced. We had Michigan coming out of the top right portion. We had 2 3 seeds, Florida and Kansas. And then we have a 2 seed with Houston. So representatives from the conference, 1 from the Big Ten, 1 from the SEC, and 2 from the Big 12. So we have Florida versus Houston. Like I mentioned, a national championship rematch. I do think in this scenario, Houston would get their revenge against the Gators, and they would move back to the national championship game. Then we have Michigan facing off against Kansas. I'm going to go with Michigan continuing on to the national championship. And I'm going to continue picking Michigan. I mean, nothing's really changed from last week to this week. And I think that this would definitely set up nice for them. They would have a tough path facing off against North Carolina and teams like Michigan State. They've been battle tested. They go through the Big Ten conference play. This Houston and Michigan game, like, even if we do get this Final Four, like, look at the teams. Florida, you get the defending chance. Michigan, Kansas, Houston. The 2 matchups that we would get would definitely be tremendous. But we do have Michigan defeating Houston in the national championship. So for back-to-back years, Houston gets ever so closely to winning the national championship, but they cannot get it done, as we do have the Michigan Wolverines winning the national championship in this version of the Bracketology. So we will be back next week looking at the latest Bracketology. Probably you're going to be shifting over to looking at CBS just to get a different perspective. Maybe there's like some teams that we have in this Bracketology that may be in another bracket. So it's just depending on matchups, how I pretty much, view this and how I pick this bracket. But let me know who you have right now winning the national championship, making it to the Final Four down in the comments. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your day. We'll have more content rolling throughout the week. We have the college baseball season right around the corner, and college basketball is definitely heating up as we get closer to the March Madness selection show, as well as the conference tournaments getting underway in early March. So I definitely appreciate everybody for tuning in to the night show, and I'll catch you all next time. So long for now.